I believe we need one, Mr. City Manager. If we could ask for a presentation, please.
Let me ask Mr. Mensie to come forward regarding staff's recommendation and the Planning Commissioner's recommendation.
Mayor and members of the board, items 34 and 35 are before you on appeal from the Planning Commission on both items. Item 34 is a request to amend the land use plan in the Heights Hlllcrest area from single family to mixed use. That was denied by the Planning Commission. The vote was 1 aye and 6 noes with several absent. Staff is not in support of the land use plan change. We feel that this would be an inappropriate location to introduce a non-residential land use category. If we could go back to the land use plan map, you can see what the city has tried to do over the years is starting down at Markham, which is to the south of this property, to allow for more intense commercial development, and as you move to the north, to start transitioning with some office and then suburban office into the single family area. We feel that's an appropriate land use pattern, and obviously what's being proposed here is not appropriate, and we feel it's very questionable to allow the land use to change here. Item 35 is a request to rezone the same property, 310 North Van Buren, from the current R3 single family to planned commercial development to allow a beauty shop. Again, we question the appropriateness of introducing a non-residential use at this location. Over the years, an effort has been made to limit the zoning of non-residential property south of B Street, with B being kind of lying. Now, there are some non-conforming uses along Van Buren to the north, but again, they're non-conforming and have been there for years and years. Staff is not in support of the rezoning to planned commercial development for the proposed use, and the item was denied by a Planning Commission by the same vote, 1 aye and 6 noes with several absent.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bazinski? Thank you, Mr. Bazinski. I've got several cards for and against. I have 2 here that don't indicate whether they are for or against these items. And if you would let me know that, please. Rena Sheffer. Okay. And Marcia Camp. Against? And I believe the applicant is here. Is that correct? If you would come forward, please, and make your presentation.
Mayor and members of the board, I'm Steve Neiswanger. It's my honor and pleasure to be able to speak tonight on behalf of Kimmy Mensie. This is her application. I've got some pictures. They say pictures are worth 1,000 words, and lawyers tend to talk too much anyway, so I thought maybe this would be a nice. Now, I don't know how many of you, I'll get to the pictures in just a second. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Nails by Kimmy. If you ever tailgated on the 18th hole at War Memorial Golf Course, you probably saw it right across the street there. It's been there for 10 years. Kimmy's been operating out, and of course that's very close to this North Van Buren location we're talking about right now. Well, Kimmy operated out of there for about 10 years, and our landlord decided to sell the property, and the new purchaser didn't want Kimmy as a tenant. So she did what she thought was a smart business decision. She went and looked for a property that she could own herself and operate out of. And she went around the corner and saw this house on 310 North Van Buren, very near her location, because a lot of her clients are from Hlllcrest. And she saw this house. Realtor told her, hey, it's not going to be a problem, zoning, don't worry about it. And she bought it. And then after she bought it, found out it was zoned R3. So here we are. This is why we're here. We're trying to allow Kimmy to operate Nails by Kimmy out of her house on this location. Now, pictures were taken a couple weeks weeks ago. I don't know if everybody can see him or not. Miss Adcock probably cannot. And I need a microphone. Hang on. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now? Okay. Now, I went across the street from Kimmy's house, and this is on North Van Buren, and I took a picture of her house right here. Now, I want you to know, it's my understanding the house behind me is a rental house. And I understand that there are several rental houses in that vicinity right behind where I'm taking the picture on the opposite side of the street. Now, I know technically rental houses don't violate the R3, but you got to consider they are businesses in some respect. Anyway, so I pivoted to the right, okay? And I took a picture up north. This is to the north. So you got Kimmy's house here, another house here, and voila, a business, okay? Then I pivoted to the left and took a picture south down the street towards West Markham, and you have a house, and a business. It's pretty easy to see why Miss Kimmy thought maybe she could operate her business out of there. Now, I took my little camera, and when I pivoted to the right up north, I zoomed in on this business. It says West. Then I walked up and took a picture of it directly across the street. It's got a bright orange awning, which is not a conforming awning, but it's still very attractive. But anyway, this is a business. This is right up the street from her. And it's going to happen again. Sorry about that, folks.
Good exercise.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Now, to give you a little bit more perspective, I stood in front of Kimmy's house, took a picture directly north. You can see the business there. And then I turned around and took a picture, thank you, directly south, and you can see War Memorial Stadium there. It's very close, just 3 blocks from West Markham. Do you see that White House right there? Okay, keep that in mind. That's that house right there. Guess what this is? A beauty salon, less than a block away. And I went further north up Van Buren, and guess what I found? Another business. This is an antique store. And if you go all the way up to Kavanaugh, you find a laundromat. So there are definitely businesses north of this location. There are a lot of people here in support of Miss Kimmy and her clients, and most of them are prominent businesswomen from Little Rock and mainly Hlllcrest. We'll get to that in a second. The staff is against this, and I want to talk about the reasons they're against this and tell you what we did to address their concerns, and yet they are still against it. Okay, I'm reading from their report. The staff feels that the expansion of the commercial activities into the neighborhood could significantly impact the area. Well, you're going to hear from one of her neighbors, yes, it has significantly impacted the area to a great benefit. But let me move on. The development is proposed as a full-service salon with 4 operators. That is not true. We amended the application at the Planning Commission's hearing to say there would be 1 full-time operator, that's Kimmy, 2 part-time people, and that they would only have customers there by appointment only, no drive-up traffic. It goes on to say the proposed use is not a quiet commercial use, but in fact a commercial activity which could potentially generate in excess of 40 to 50 trips per day. Again, this is not per hour coming into her shop. And occasionally, the other 2 people who are there part-time will similarly have people there by appointment only. That's how they did business around the corner, across from War Memorial Golf Course, and that's how they're going to continue to do business. It goes on to say the staff feels the single-family residential nature of North Van Buren Street should be protected and upheld. Staff feels the commercial activities should remain as presently exist and be maintained south of B Street. Well, guess what? It's too late to maintain it south of B Street because there's at least 2 businesses north of Miss Kimmy. One of the other things we did in this application was to say it was restricted solely to Miss Kimmy. If she ever sells the property, it will revert back to R3. If she ever stops operating her nail and pedicure place out of there, it reverts back to R3. So it's not like we're asking to change this forever and ever. We're asking it to be changed simply so she can operate her business out of her house. So why is the staff still against it? We've addressed every single concern they put in their report. And here's something that's interesting. Very recently, a PCD application was approved on Spruce Street, north of this location near Kavanaugh, very nearby. I don't know why. It may not be exactly the same. Now, there's a gentleman here tonight who is a neighbor who doesn't want to see the parking lot in his backyard. I understand that. Guess what? There is a privacy fence all the way around the parking lot. So that really shouldn't be an issue. Because, by the way, this used to be a dilapidated property with overgrown stuff in the backyard. What's there now is a whole lot better than what was there for 3 years. Not everybody in support of Kimmy can be here tonight. There are several that are here to a late hour, which should show you how much they love Kimmy. But I'm going to read to you some of these that aren't here because they're pretty impressive. Carolyn Clayton is the executive director of the Pulaski County Medical Society. Here's what she says. I have known Kimmy for more than 2 years and know her as a professional person who takes pride in her work and her surroundings. Kimmy is a double minority, an African-American woman, and a successful small business owner. She has worked hard and deserves our support to continue the many contributions a highly regarded professional business makes to the multifaceted Hlllcrest community. She purchased a building on Van Buren to conduct business, just like many other businessmen and women have done on both sides of Van Buren. She immediately began improvements to the property, which had become an eyesore to the neighborhood. Kimmy has cleaned, painted, and removed huge amounts of unsightly overgrown bushes and weeds. She is in the process of clearing the backyard and tearing down a broken down building to provide a parking lot for her customers as well. It would be in the best interest of the Van Buren community, the Hlllcrest Property Owners Association, and the City of Little Rock to grant approval for Nails by Kimmy to continue at its Van Buren location. I strongly urge you to grant her permit request. There's one thing I want to point out to this board before I read some more of these really outstanding letters, and then you're going to get to hear from some of the people in person. I was looking at the policy statements of the City of Little Rock that's in the agenda. It is the policy of the City of Little Rock to create an environment that attracts new business, retains and encourages growth for existing businesses, and supports growth sectors within our economy. We're not asking, as Mr. Bazinski stated, he said this is an improper use. No, in fact, we're not asking you to do anything improper. We're asking you to implement the economic development policy of the City of Little Rock. That's what we're asking you to do.
Thank you, Mr. Niswiger.
I've got just a couple more letters I'd like
You
to...
want to submit them to the city clerk, or do you want to summarize those? I mean, or tell us who they are. We've got several cards here, and I'm going to try and keep
You
us
wanna get
all
us
within
outta
a
here.
proper time frame.
I understand. I will summarize it. There are people here that have lived in Hlllcrest 20, 30, 40 years that want this there. And that's really the gist of it. And I'll save everybody some time.
Why don't you go ahead and submit those to the city clerk, and then we can pass those around as we have other people who wish to speak.
Thank you all for your time. I know it's getting late. Kimmy, you want to say thank you?
Thank you.
All right, we have, I'm going to limit this to 15 minutes per side on this. I've got 5 cards for, and I've got several cards against. 1, 2. Looks like I got about 12 cards against. So we'll alternate these. I guess the 4s have about 3 minutes, and the antis have about 1.5 minutes. So if you would, please try not to be repetitive. Let's try and make new points as it relates to what your concerns are. Okay? We'll start with Marcia Camp.
My
Set that for about
question,
1.5 minutes, please.
My question
Everybody
to
on time.
you is, did you all see a photograph of the contiguous property? Did you see a big yellow gingerbread house? He shot up and down the streets, but did you see the yellow house? That is for sale for almost $400,000, and it's worth every penny of it. I walked through it. And what you see from the dining room is the proposed parking lot. Now, properties like this must be protected by someone from encroachment of commercial property. And the only one who can protect it is people like y'all, the city board. The parking lot is something that I'm concerned with, in that you will have women getting in and out of a car in a secluded parking lot off of an alley. Now, we have about all the crime we can enjoy up and down those streets. We are 2 blocks off of Markham at the intersection of Van Buren and Markham. We have the police are up and down our alley all the time. I am at the other end of that alley, so I speak from experience. Hlllcrest is having quite a crime problem. I was at the Neighborhood Watch group last night, and people have stolen the air conditioners out of 2 different churches in our area, and there are robberies going on during the day. So we're all watching each other's backs. We do not need another commercial building added to the mix. This area, Hlllcrest, started a little over 100 years ago. It needs to be protected the way the Quapaw Quarter is protected. It's the real jewel of Little Rock. And the only people who can protect it is groups like you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Camp. All right, to speak for, Marcella Callahan.
I'd just like to.
Would just identify yourself and
Okay.
your address, please.
I'm Marcella Callahan, and I work with the USDA Department of Agriculture. I've been a client of Kimmy's for probably about the last 5 or 6 years in her past location. And I can honestly say that she sets appointments up that there has maybe been a half a dozen times where there's been someone else there while I was there. Usually there's about a 15, 20-minute, and it's probably no more. For me, it's like going and visiting a family member. I mean, she happens to do my nails, no different than if someone was going to someone's house to have a pedicure or a massage. But she's a very professional person. I think she's added a lot since she has been there. I have gone down that alley, and the back of those houses are really scary in some of those other places. At least she has cleaned up the dilapidated buildings that have been around in her backyard. And I'd just like you guys to give some consideration in what she actually could bring to the city of Little Rock with her business.
I have a
continue.
question.
Yes, Director Rackak has a question for you.
Brian, could you tell me where do you live, or do you live in Hlllcrest?
No, ma'am. I work downtown, and I live out on Breckenridge.
Thank you.
But I live in the city, yes.
Okay, the next card I have is from Rena Sheffer. Speak against.
My name is Rena Sheffer. I live on B Street. I live around the corner down a few houses from the proposed change. And I would like to say that I've only been in Little Rock for 17 years, so I'm a newcomer. But Hlllcrest always attracted me. I found it very charming. I think of it as a small town, a small community, and it has some pockets of commerce, and that's nice. It's nice to be able to not have to drive 10 miles to Kroger, etc. But those are in particular areas, and its main appeal is its residential, neighborly aura, I'll say. And I think that that's very important, and it's an attraction for Little Rock. It's not Quapaw, no, it's different, but I think it is very attractive, and I think it's important to maintain that. Now, since I live on B Street, south of me, you do have a lot of commerce, and that's okay. It's near Markham, it's near the stadium. I knew that when I moved there about 3 years ago, but I thought, good, it'll stay there. is what I was hoping, and that the residential area would maintain where it is. And yes, there are 2 businesses up Van Buren. One of them has been there a very long time, and the other one, I'm not even sure if it's still operating. I never see anybody there. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
I believe Director Wright has a question for
Well,
you.
she kind of answered it. I was going to ask her, how did she feel about the other businesses, the antique shop? I visited a couple of those places. I think that Patty Wax, and then you go on down and onto the left. And
Yeah, that's south of B Street, and those were there when I was looking at moving there, and so I was aware of those, and I just thought, that's part of, that area, and it's very, very close to Markham. So that didn't bother me because it was already there. The antique shop, I consider that to not be inappropriate for Hlllcrest, plus it's been there for a long time. The other business,
got a restaurant in there somewhere too?
no. The other business, I don't even know what it is, and I, for one, don't like the orange awning, but did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
All right, our next card, speaking for, is from Daphne Puckett. Puckett, if you would, identify yourself and where you live, please.
Hi, I'm Daphne Puckett, and I live on 5101C, which is the house. I actually own the house. I've lived there for 3 years, and it is directly in between Kimmy's and West, the building, or the business in front of it. And actually, since she got there, the house that she is in right now was abandoned for 3 years before now. And in that amount of time, the alley, which my alley is more affected by the parking than anybody else's. My house is, like I said, it's right exactly across the alley from hers. My car was broken into 3 times within the last 2.5 years in that alleyway. Since she has moved in, she has actually cleaned up a lot of nasty debris and, what everybody's talking about, looking out onto a parking lot now. What you were looking out on was pretty bad. I mean, it was, it was ugly. It's really been cleaned up a lot. And she's got motion lights and things hooked up, and I'm actually benefiting from, the occasional person being active back there, because I think it actually helps with the crime. And as far as the flow of traffic goes, there is usually one car there besides her own, and that's maybe every 1 or 2 hours. I'm likely to have that many visitors come by, I mean, there really are not, it's not a lot of cars. So there's not a big traffic thing. Like with the antique shop and a few of the others, people are free to come and go as they want, There's no telling how many cars might be there at one given time. Well, with this, she knows exactly who's going to be there and when. And I've been really attentive of this, with it being in my backyard since the last time it was addressed. I've been paying really close attention to it, and I don't see anything bad coming out of it. I really don't. She has a great clientele. Everybody is really sweet. I think it's attractive. It's a social thing. I don't mind having a little nail shop in my backyard. As a matter of fact, I think it's attractive and cute, And as far as the crime goes, I don't see how it could make crime worse. I think, if anything, it has actually improved that. And like I said, the house itself definitely looks much better.
Thank you very much. Let me mention my next card to speak, actually to just register being against it, Mr. Mark Robinette. You want to raise your hand, Mr. Robinette? Oh, okay, he wished to register his objection. Speaking against the item, Brian Germany.
Good evening, Mayor Stodola, directors. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening. I'm that no-good neighbor that doesn't want to look at what is not really a parking lot at the moment, but lots of dirt pushed into the backyard.
Where do you live, Mr. Germany?
I live at 5112 B Street, and her backyard abuts the last one-third of my backyard, adjacent to the big yellow gingerbread house with the red barn at 300 North Van Buren. I think that we should keep the zoning, the commercial zoning south of B Street. I bought that house about 15 years ago after previously living on North Pierce in the Heights. I've been a resident in the area for about 20 years. I welcomed the rehabilitation of the Markham House Suites Hotel. I welcomed the eye surgery center at the corner of A Street and Van Buren, because those were truly dilapidated crack houses there that were bulldozed. There was an elderly gentleman who was an aircraft mechanic for the Royal Air Force back post-World War II, who owned that little two-story house, who built a bomb shelter in the backyard, who collected nuts and bolts and pieces of tin. And frankly, yes, he filled them up in these little sheds, and he let the backyard grow crazy. His wife passed away about 4 years ago, he passed away about 3 years ago, so it did go untended by the family. So in that respect, Kimmy's done a fine job of cleaning the place up, but I question her business acumen in purchasing a place to run as a business without having secured the zoning. I would have thought Mr. Noswanger would have, done a better job of advising her on that in the beginning. Let's don't make the neighborhood pay at this point. Staff has recommended that this zoning be denied. The neighbors concur. At the end of the day, it's about planning, and it's about zoning, and it's about spot zoning. And very clearly, this is spot zoning, and we would appreciate your voting against this. Are there any questions from the directors?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Could you clarify? Yes.
Sorry, Director Hendricks. I try to recognize people in order, and Director Wright has hit me hard
Okay.
here on the left,
Oh, yeah.
and he'll be next.
I don't want you bruised. Go on.
do you not consider the other zoning in that area to be spot zoning, sir?
Actually, the property that is now West Design was originally, I think, a Remax real estate office when I bought that house in 1994 or 3, I believe, and then it became River Rock, and it was a management office that ran several restaurants in the area.
That's why I thought there was a restaurant there.
Yeah, well, it was River Rock Management Company. They never had customers. And now it's West Design, and they really don't have customers dropping in. They actually have a little van, and they go out and they do all that foo-foo fancy stuff to houses that rich people, pay for. And then further up
The
the block.
spot zoning, though.
Well, no, actually, I think it's grandfathered in for like 50 years.
Non-conforming use.
The same as the little 50, and the Patty Wax is actually at Markham and Van Buren, which, if you can find it next door to, the Exxon station and all the hullabaloo with ball games down there, I mean, that's where all that commotion belongs. The neighbors feel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speaking for
My
Elizabeth.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Hendricks has a question for you.
Yes, Director Hendricks.
You would really have to explain to me, what did you mean by her coming in there with, the neighbors would have to pay for it? What do you mean by that?
The neighbors would have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's what you just said.
What statement did I make?
Yes.
Oh, the neighbors would have to pay for it in terms of the commotion. Now, it's been presented that there's one customer per hour. Actually, I've seen maybe as few as her car and maybe one other car, or I've seen 4 and 5 other cars. Now, the payment that I'm talking about is the devaluation of the property, because there is a commercial business visible through the dining room window of the big yellow house, which is...
Do you have figures that would tell you that her business would depreciate your property?
It
I'm a real
depends on how
estate
it's run.
broker.
Now, I question the enforcement ability of the city to enforce after hours, because another neighbor has complained about after-hours activities, with the appearance of a business being conducted right now in violation of the lack of zoning, and they were told that no one was available, just as there's no one typically available to pick up a dog except in an emergency. There's no one available to go knock on the door and say, "Excuse me, are you doing hair and nails?"
I'm talking about depreciation.
I'm sure there's quite the potential. I feel that there is a potential, or there's the potential that if she becomes zoned, Mark Abernathy will buy that yellow house and put a restaurant and a bar and grill there, or somebody across the street might want to do the same thing. So once you allow that encroachment through spot zoning, you open the Pandora's box of that entire corridor right up to Mount St. Mary's becoming a commercial zone.
Let me suggest what did happen in 1957. If you have a problem, then most people will move. That's just a suggestion.
If you saw the people that I associate with, if you knew the people I associate with that I count among my friends, we celebrate diversity in Hlllcrest, and I will stand for anyone's right to have the privilege of living in that neighborhood, and be my neighbor. And if you zone, Kimmy, that's fine. I have to look at that backyard. I want to know how high the fence might be.
You answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much, Director Hendricks. Are there any other questions?
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Aristotle, this term spot zoning has been thrown around, and I'm a little concerned about that because spot zoning is not proper, but this is not spot zoning, it's a plan development. And by definition, a plan development is something that can be put into an area that wouldn't be zoned that way as a matter of right with appropriate safeguards to be compatible with the area. So it is not spot zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. If we could, speaking for Elizabeth Clark. If you would wait for 1 minute, Ms. Clark. Director Wright has a
Mr.
question.
Carpenter, your explanation of spot zoning is appreciated. So if this is not spot zoning, and her attorney have said that they've addressed all of the planning commissions, all the planning department's concerns, so in other words, this could be considered appropriate as far as them having addressed those needs.
Right, the policy question for the board is whether to approve it. It is not illegal.
Okay, Ms. Clark, go ahead, please. If you would identify yourself and where you live.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Clark, and I live at 5310 C Street, and I operate a business on Markham. I've known Kimmy for approximately 23 years, give or take 6 months, and the last decade I've known her as a business owner. Most of that time she worked at Markham, and she had a secluded parking in the back there, and made sure that she had lighting, and that if it was just her and another customer, she would walk them out, and she never had a problem there. Since she has moved to that house, I actually noticed that there was a house there. I couldn't even see a house before that. She's cleaned up the backyard. I have not, as I've driven by, noticed a lot of cars. I don't typically get my nails done, but I do live in that area and drive by quite a bit. There is lighting where there wasn't lighting before, and I'm not really sure where the concern comes from that this would make a big impact on the area, because unless you know it's there, you would never know it was a business. I think even if she put up a little cottage sign, you would never know, because it's still a house, it's still decorated as a house, the landscaping is still as a house. You really would never know.
Thank you very much. Next card to speak against, Marcia Camp. Oh, I've got 2 cards from you. Thank you. Next card is from Mr. Olingo. Speak against.
My name's Sterling Lango. I live at 5301 B Street. Most of the things I've got to say has already been said. The only thing that I would like to know now is the city attorney said something about if this is approved, that is not spot zoning. Okay, then what I'd like to know is why the zoning commission, who denied it, has said that that spot zoning is one of the things that would, if it was approved, that spot zoning would be that would be spot zoning.
Spot zoning is a legal phrase and has a specific meaning if the planning commission doesn't like the concept because of several reasons, traffic, what it does in the area, whether it can be harmonious, that can be their concern or the reason, and I don't really know what each of the members thought. All I'm saying is that if the board wants to approve this, it's not illegal. If the board wants to disapprove this, it's not illegal.
Okay. Well, I sit on my porch and I could look right across at the property that was that we're talking about. And my concern is that she says that she's an operator and 2 part-times. If this is approved, then who is to say and who will control how many operators that she will bring in? How many cars that will be coming in there, at the same time? Because if if she gets us approved on one operator and two part-times, then what's to stop her? Because right now, the reason I say I look across at it is I see numerous cars there. You know, at night and in the daytime, and I'm not standing there watching her just for the heck of it, because I, you know, that I am not for having a business established in a block that has no businesses. And that's about all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lingo. Yes, Director Hurst has a question.
Mayor, I guess this question would be for Mr. Buzinski. Is it written into the ordinance that she can have 2 part-time employees?
Vice Mayor, as was stated, the application was amended for 1 full-time and 2 part-time. The ordinance has a section in it that makes reference to the action that was taken at the Planning Commission meeting to amend the application.
Does it say hours in the application? Part-time hours?
I think the hours,
I know, but does it quantify what part-time means?
I don't think no, I'm not sure. I don't think it does, Vice Mayor.
It doesn't. And what parking is, if we have a parking lot, what parking is required for this sort of business? How many parking spaces?
Typically, for a personal service operation such as this, I need to get the ordinance. I can tell you what office and commercial is. I think this is 1 to 200, 1 space per 200 square feet, but let me check that.
Okay. Could you also tell me what signage is allowed?
All right, while he's looking that up, we'll go to our next cards. For the applicant, Becky Whelan.
Hi, I'm Becky Whalen, and I'm a client of Kimmy's and a friend. I was at the last board meeting, and a lot of the things that were presented, a lot of the men that were there heard beauty shop, and this is not a conventional beauty shop. You look at it, it's a cute little cottage. It's a house. Kimmy never had a big sign before. She's made concessions on this. She had cute little awnings at her other place. I mean, it is an attribute to the area. And I had talked to one of the other board members and asked him if he had been by, had even seen it. He went, no. And he said he was going to go by. He never did. And I just, talking to her neighbor and other people, it is an attribute. I feel like it is the right thing. I mean, that property looked like crap. And the whole reason that we and Kimmy is coming before this board is if everything was just cut and dry, then no, there'd be no businesses there. But she is wanting to do a good thing. There are limitations, strict limitations, and there is no one ever there when I'm there, and I'm there at 10 o'clock every other Wednesday. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, and I think maybe the women who do get their nails done understand that you don't have 15 people in there when you're doing it. There's one person. And the people that do hair for her are not the main support of that business. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question. Could you please tell me where you live?
I live in Leewood, very close to Rodney Parham, right off 1 street off of Rodney Parham. which has a lot of business.
Said the people that does hair for her, so there is hair done?
There are 2 part-time employees that I've seen maybe in there 4 or 5 times in the last 5 years.
They do hair.
They do hair.
Okay, thank you.
Kimmy does not do hair.
Thank you very much. Paula Lingo, do you have anything new to add to this dialogue? Okay, good.
I live at 5021 B Street with Mr. Lingo, and we've lived there about 10 years. And this is our retirement home. Mr. Lingo's just retired. By way of background, I just want to tell you that I'm familiar with real estate and the sale and purchase of that because I'm a licensed real estate broker in Massachusetts and Maine, but not here in Arkansas. Here I am, a licensed social worker. And both of those things I'm telling you because I understand the jam, the predicament that Kimmy has gotten into, believing that it was a foregone conclusion. I think that that could be commercial use. I also thought when we bought our house that I was comfortable that what business existed there was grandfathered and that it had an R3 zoning, which would be residential. I think we do real well in that neighborhood to cope with the mix we have. And I will agree with Mr. Germany that Hlllcrest, I think, is pretty much known for diversity, equality. So at the planning board hearing, when it was suggested, and I think maybe I'm going to hear it again tonight, that it was Ms. Mensie personally who we did not want in the neighborhood, I really have to tell you that that is certainly not true of Mr. Lingo and I or neighbors who I know. We just want to keep the nature of the neighborhood as it is. And if Kimmy would like to use that as a residence, of course. But we would not like to see this board break into the zoning of a block that doesn't have any grandfathered business or commercial at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lingo. Okay, I have one other card speaking for, Carolyn Johnson.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Johnson. I actually live in Leawood, but I did live in Hlllcrest and still own my house on C Street. I'm not very good at doing this. This is how important this is to me for Kimmy. I've been a client of hers for about 5 years, and I pretty much would have the same thing to say, that it's a quiet business, not many cars there. There's usually maybe one other person. I'll get there a little early, and she's still there. But, excuse me. Anyway, Hlllcrest is one of my favorite parts of this city. And my little house there on C Street it's so charming. The neighborhood is very charming, and I would not advocate anything that I felt like would be detrimental to that area. And like several of them have said, she's made a lot of improvements and probably is going to be a positive influence. All I have to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson.
Mayor, I want to...
Director Hendricks has a question.
It's really not a question. I just want to allay your fears. I've heard several times the question was asked, where do you live? You know, I live downtown, but I shop out on Shackleford.
Right.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, where did you say you lived? I'm sorry. Leawood, but you own property that you rent out?
I rent it out now. It was my personal residence.
I understand. Thank you.
Marriage will do that. It'll get you moved. Okay, we have some other cards against Cynthia Collada.
And I live at 50 Kim Latta, Latta. Latta. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
cut my time
There's a
short.
Cynthia in
Okay.
front of that, is that?
Yeah, well, I've never used
You
my
don't use
birth
that
name,
name?
no.
Okay,
It doesn't
so this
fit
is
my
Cynthia,
style.
known as Kim Kalata.
Yes, no, K. Latta.
Lata.
Whatever, okay.
Lata, if you will, go
I
forward.
live on B Street.
He lives on B Street.
Yeah, please, yeah. I live on B Street, 5019 B Street, next to Lingo's and the other neighbors here. I've been there 13 years. I have a licensure in therapy, and I understand diversity, and I would appreciate Kimmy living there. However, you're putting a business in between two houses on a block. Everything else, all the businesses on Van Buren and in Hlllcrest are on the corners. They're not in between two structural houses and an alley. They mentioned the fact that Hlllcrest has become involved with crime. We're also looking at the potential for these wonderful people that are coming up that have Kimmy for a nailist could be hurt. And now the residents that she has improved, by purchasing that property, anyone's going to improve it because it's been for sale. And I would love to have her for a neighbor. However, I do not want to see more traffic on B Street in Van Buren. When the cars come up Van Buren, it's nice to have the cars slow down if people are turning, and they're going to have to be stopping that traffic to turn in the middle of two houses, between the gingerbread house and the little house on the corner. They're going to have to pull into a very narrow driveway with busy traffic coming both ways, which is going to stop it, just like Chick-fil-A did in front of Park Plaza, which zoning, have mercy on us for that, let go through. So the traffic on Van Buren is very busy, and we have pets too. Now, we would appreciate the slowdown of traffic with this commercial business, right? However, if you're putting a business in between two houses, it's not okay. In my backyard, I have a chiropractor that was grandfathered in. Now I have a beautiful backyard with the parking lot behind me, and that's what they're worried about.
Thank you, Ms. Lata.
It's not about Kimmy.
Director Wyrick, or excuse me, I think Director Wright has a question.
Mayor, I wanted to know, your house is where? On C Street?
B.
B.
When you look at where Kimmy is,
Uh-huh.
Lingo's are on the corner, I'm right here. This is B, this is Van Buren.
Okay. And so Kimmy faces,
I look out to the left of my porch to the gingerbread house.
okay, Kimmy faces what street?
Van Buren.
Van Buren.
Van Buren.
She's on Van Buren.
Are, so no one next to her is here?
No.
The house?
The gingerbread
Okay,
house.
so the neighbor that lives next to her that would actually,
No, she is.
would actually be impacted
Yeah,
by
but
this?
she's on the other corner. She's on, okay, this is C, this is B. The gingerbread house is on B. Kimmy's house is in the middle. And then Daphne's house is on C.
So right next door to Kimmy is a house that's for sale.
That's correct.
And
$400,000 house for sale.
And what else is on next door to the, on the opposite, on
Her
the
house.
other side? Oh, that answers
Three
my,
houses.
that answers my question.
Everything else is on the corner. Nothing's in the middle of houses. It's not racial and it's not personal.
Let me ask I have a brief question for Mr. Brzezinski. Based on this dialogue, I understood that Kimmy is supposed to live here as well. Is that true or not true?
Mayor, when the application was filed, it was our understanding that this would also be her residence. But during the Planning Commission hearing, she made the statement that she stated she would not live in the home, only use the structure for her business.
Okay. Let me ask another question about home occupations. If she were to live in this house, would this be a permitted home occupation to some extent?
No, Mayor. The ordinance has permitted and prohibited, and barber, beauty shops are specifically prohibited
As home occupations?
Yes. And if I can answer the question about the parking requirement, it is one space per 200 square feet for a personal service.
And I see it says it allows a single sign. Are there no specified dimensions?
The Hlllcrest DOD, 6 feet in height and 64 square feet in size.
All right. I've got two more cards against Ruth Bell.
I'm Ruth Bell with the League of Women Voters, and Mayor, you asked my first question when you asked about whether the applicant was going to live in the house or not, because that's what's unclear at the Planning Commission level. From the League's point of view, this is a planning issue. And as you have heard, people make major financial decisions on the basis of planning, and with the expectation that the planning, especially in an established neighborhood like this, will be fairly consistent over a fairly long period of time. The intrusion of a commercial business in the middle of a residential section of that street does not only make it more difficult or challenging or perhaps interesting for the people who live there, but it also means that the city is not being consistent and perhaps, in our opinion, upholding the city's responsibility to support zoning in an area, because citizens make so many decisions based on the existing zoning. And our position is that exceptions should not be made to existing zoning unless a clear and compelling reason exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. I have one final card against Scott Smith. Smith, if you would identify yourself and who you represent.
Indeed. Mayor Stodola, Vice Mayor Hurst, Board of Directors. I'm Scott Smith. I'm the president of the Hlllcrest Residents Association. At our November meeting, this came before us, and it was a unanimous agreement to oppose the change to the land use. It really is a change in the fabric of houses and commercial. And once one house goes down, it might not seem significant, but it triggers the next one, which then triggers the next one. So I would ask that you follow your staff's recommendations, your planning commission, the Hlllcrest Residents Association, and deny this change in plan. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card that I have. I'm going to go ahead and if there's no further public comment, come forward, please, Mr. Neiswanger.
I'm speaking on behalf of Ms. Kimmy. There are several things said that we absolutely dispute, and if y'all would give me a couple of minutes, I see you already are. Let me address them. People are saying spot zoning, planning issue. Let's look at the big
I think
picture.
we understand the distinctions there. I don't think we need to go back over that. We understand that it's going to be a permissible use if the board decides to vote for it.
Is it an existing permitted use already? Well, that's on an appeal. We disagree with Mr. Bazinski. The law allows you to operate out of your house and also conduct the business of doing artwork, teaching music, and you can have up to 2 students at a time. Okay? Mr. Bazinski wants to call this a beauty salon. It is not. You think about a grocery store, they sell bread, they sell produce, they sell milk, they sell beer and wine. If I only sell beer and wine, am I still a grocery store? That's what Mr. Bazinski is arguing. We do not.
Let me ask a question, Steve. Are the 2 part-timers doing hair? Yes or no?
I'm not positive. They were at the old location. I don't know that they're doing hair now. And I want to address some of these really ugly comments being made over here.
We've been dealing with this for a long period of time. I think the board has a good sense of this issue, but I want to ask that question. Are the 2 part-timers going to be doing hairstyling?
Actually, I only have one hairdresser and myself.
So, Kimmy, you're going to be doing some hairstyling as well?
No, I do manicures and pedicures only.
Okay.
And I'm full-time, and I have clients that I do on the hour, like they said. And as far as the parking in the back, when I was on Markham, it was more crime on Markham, and I had a parking lot in the back, and I had never had any crime.
Okay, but to answer my question then, so you have one
One
person
hairdresser.
part-time that's going to be a
Actually, he works
hairdresser.
a part-time
And your
job.
application requests 2 part-timers. Would that second part-timer you anticipate be doing hairstyling as well?
If I can get someone else in there, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Mr. Neiswanger, I'm not going to get into what is a beauty salon or what's not a beauty salon. I think the issue is that they're going to be doing nails and they're going to be doing some hairstyling, right?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Now, what other issues did you want to address?
Something that's really interesting is how, let me just put this, Miss Kimmy's already living there. There's no question she's going to continue living there. At the meeting at the Planning Commission, she got upset because there were some comments made that she was going to increase crime by being there. That hurt her feelings. That's a racial stereotype. And so she got up and she said, maybe I won't live there. And that was a misstatement on her part. Her application, as written and as amended, stands. She still lives there now.
Well, let me ask this question. If you get this rezoned, do you plan to live there? Are you going to be living there and doing this work or not?
When I was on Markham, I did not live inside my business. But I would like to eventually add something on to that property because the property is big enough to add like an apartment on the side of that. Because really, legally, you're not supposed to live inside of a business if you're running a nail business, a hair business, but you can add on to it.
Is that by virtue of your licensing?
Right.
Oh, okay, so there's a state licensing statute that prohibits you from living in the home where
Right.
you would do this particular type of work.
But in actuality, I could live there because there's a part on the back of the house that is separated from where I will be doing business upstairs. That's detached, that has a garage, actually can be a garage apartment.
Mayor, I want to ask a direct question because I've gotten lost in her answer.
All right, go ahead.
I want to make certain
Go ahead,
I
Director
understand. Kimmy, if you live in this house now, will you continue to live in this house?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I also want to make a statement too. And I just can't believe some of these people that live in the Hlllcrest area. I've been in this area 15 years. And since I've moved to 310 Van Buren, you should see some of the things that has happened to me. I mean, you're supposed to get welcome packages when you move in these areas. I haven't gotten not one. You know, it's just all negativity, you know. They don't, you know, they just, like he said, he does watch me. And as far as the phone calls, they have stopped. I was receiving threatening phone calls. They have stopped. And I will hope they will stop. But I do love this area, and I would like to stay in this area.
I'm still confused from what Mr. Keck asked. Is this a 2-story house? Did I hear you say something about upstairs?
It has a garage apartment on the back of it. It's attached.
So this is a house with an attached garage?
Actually, the laundry room separates it. It's upstairs, and actually it's on the back side of it.
We could draw a picture if that would be helpful.
Actually, you got a picture.
I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, if I understand, have you gotten a license? I mean, have you gotten a license? Or is there a requirement to get a state license to determine whether or not you can occupy a portion of this premises and still do this type of work?
I believe what Kimmy just explained, and Kimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if she lives above the apartment, since above the garage, she can comply with the state licensing requirements for doing nails and toenails and hair.
And so how large is this house that's not going to be used for a home?
Well, okay, how large is
You're talking about a garage and living upstairs from the garage.
The dimensions of the existing structure are in the plan, and we've got an architect here. But my understanding, our engineer architect here, who can probably answer these questions better than me, but there is a garage, and above that garage is an apartment, a small one, that Kimmy can live out of without violating the state licensure laws.
Well, I understand. So, I mean, what's in the garage then? What's underneath in the garage? Nothing.
Storage.
All right.
And again, I am not the brightest bulb in the lamp. But usually whenever I ask a question, if somebody's living there now the answer yes or no pretty well clears it up. I've heard yes, she will live there. I've heard no, she can't live there in the same place because because of licensure requirements. I've heard yes, I'm going to live there in a garage above, in an apartment above the garage. Do you live in the house now? First part. Secondly, will you continue to live in this house if this goes forward?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think Director Keck is confusing me. Do you live in the house or do you live in the garage apartment?
The garage apartment.
You do not live in the house where the business is located?
No. It's separated. You just have to see it. It's only actually, the house is only 1038 square feet. So they added the garage onto that, to the back of that. Actually, it's not too many houses in the area that has garages. So actually, I can make that into a garage apartment, but upstairs it has a room, a shower, and a bathroom.
That's all that's up there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you live in is one room and a...
That's all I need. It's just myself. I have no kids.
You live in just one room and a bathroom upstairs?
That's all I need.
Thank you.
But now, wait a minute. I mean, this is the same sort of line of
Well,
question.
let's not get into an argument about this. I think we've heard enough. Is there
Okay,
any new
all right.
issues you wish to bring up, Mr. Niswanger, that were raised? I mean,
I own a business and I own the building and I'm in it after hours sometimes because I got work to do, and that doesn't mean I'm violating any laws. I mean,
I
she's
don't-
going to be able to access her building while she's living in it, but that doesn't mean she's going to violate any laws.
Can I say something?
I don't think anyone suggested that she was violating any laws there. We're just trying to clear up the issue of whether you're living in a house, living in a garage, living in the upstairs apartment of the garage, okay? Thank you.
Can I say something? A lot of neighbors are concerned about a lot of cars coming over there. A lot of those cars are not mine. Daphne has friends that come over, which that is her parking behind her house. That's hers. They were just nice enough to let me park there. But as far as me having friends and stuff over there and having a whole bunch of people around, tons of cars over there, I don't play that. I'm business. But those are her friends.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the third and final reading. And then if there's any further comments from the board members, we'll hear them. Pardon? We will when we get to that point. Let me ask for the third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to amend the land use plan in the Heights Hlllcrest Planning District from single-family to mixed use and for other purposes. An ordinance to appeal the Planning Commission's recommendation to deny a planned commercial district at 310 North Van Buren Street. Third and final reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, if I understand correctly, and I've got the city manager and the city attorney to straighten me out, on item 34, a vote yes would be to amend the land use plan, which would be a vote in favor of, at least as we're going forward, in favor of granting the use that is being asked for by the applicant. Let's take that one first, and then we'll move to the next one, because I think the vote then would be a different interpretation.
Mayor, both of them, if you vote yes, you're voting in favor of the project.
Okay, I just didn't, I want to take one at a time, but, all right. Does everyone understand? Is there any further questions? on
Mayor,
these items?
what's the other vote all about?
Well, you got one, first you have to amend the land use plan, and the second one then would be to deal with whether or not you're approving or denying the planned commercial district.
So the first vote would be for the applicant.
The request to rezone this property is in nonconformance with the land use plan. And so our staff, doing good planning recommendations, says that if you're going to rezone this property, you got to change the land use plan first. So what we're doing first is we're going to determine whether or not it's appropriate to change the land use plan. If you wish to change the land use plan, you will vote yes, and that would be to vote in favor of what the applicant is requesting. With that said, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Director Hendricks?
Yes.
Richardson is absent. Kazort? Oh, absent. Wright?
Yes.
Wyrick? No. Heck?
No.
Compuris? Fortson?
No.
Adcock? No. Vice Mayor Hurst?
The land use plan request has failed by a vote of 6-2, is that correct? All right, on item 35, again, a vote yes would be to vote in favor of the,
Mayor, the issue's moot.
is it going to be moot now?
No.
All right.
The record should show that the defeat of the land use plan is a defeat of the ordinance.
All right, thank you very much for all of your time and your energy toward this. We appreciate all of the interest that's been expressed on this particular matter. I'll ask for a clarification. Is the city attorney still here? Mr. Carpenter? The reason why I suggested a vote on that last issue, and I want to just clarify the issue, is that while I know it's not maybe the most appropriate accepted procedure to rezone property or attempt to rezone property in nonconformance with the land use plan, it's not illegal to do that. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Legal.
Not illegal. So then why would you determine that it's a moot issue as opposed to us voting on this just to make sure that the record is clear?
In this particular instance, you're asking for a plan development that would have to fit in with the land use plan, and by the defeat of the land use plan, by definition, the plan development cannot be made compatible with the area. That was my reasoning.
So the planned commercial district then as a zoning tool is different than a strict zone it to a C2 or C3 or something like that. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Is that clarified for everyone? I think Director Wyrick would like to have a conversation with you about that later. All right. If we could.
Mayor, that's why I noted that the record would show that it was a defeat of that also. Anybody's free to challenge that ruling if they wish to.
I can't hear you.
That's why I made the note that the record would show that it was a defeat of that item also, and if anybody wishes to challenge that ruling, they're free to do so as a part of parliamentary procedure.
Okay. All right, let's go forward and move on to a report. Actually, it's a report on the 2008 budget.